Cheers, me guzzlers. Oh, nice stout. So actually, just thinking about that, sort of matches my shirt, doesn't it? We're going Middle Eastern. In fact, we're going to make the national dish of Palestine. Okay, saw this and I thought, this looks really good. It's officially called, I think I'm pronouncing this right, Musakhan. Okay, Musakhan. That's Arabic word for something that is heated. Well, that's handy because we've got to cook it, haven't we? So it's basically chicken, okay, which is played with a few slices, roasted and served on a traditional bread known as taboon bread, or taboon loaf, even though it's not really a loaf, it's flatbread. Oh, pardon me, that's the stout for you. And essentially the bread was cooked in a taboon oven, hence the reason it's called taboon, but also so would the Musakhan. The taboon oven allowed you to cook various things. It retained its heat, but so where you put your thing in your oven depends on how quickly things cook. So meat might take longer, but you would put that in or stew to take longer because of where you put it in. So Palestinian Musakhan. Let's get cooking. So first thing we do, we need to get our chicken prepared and in the oven because we want to roast it. Now I've got chicken thighs simply because it's really difficult to buy like quarters of chicken. So I was tempted to buy a whole chicken and quarter it, okay, and then I thought, well, let's see what I can get. I could get drumsticks with skin on. Now you don't have to have the skin on, but traditionally you would do, and you know, get a bit crispy. And in the end I went for some thighs. So I've got some thighs, bone in, I think it is, certainly got the skin on, but it's entirely up to you how you want to do it. I've got a baking tray here, which I'm lining with parchment paper, baking paper, greaseproof paper. All right, my oven's on about 200, and first thing we're going to do is spice it up, as it were. All right, so I've got about 120 mils of oil here, and at this stage I just want 2 tablespoons to go into here. I bet that all runs down the bloody side and I'll make a bloody mess everywhere. No, yeah. So I've got 2 tablespoons of oil in there, and then I've got a teaspoon of freshly ground cumin, and then I've got 1.5 teaspoons of a spice, a nice red spice called Sumac. I don't know where you can see that. Don't know, I'll put it over there. You can't bloody see it over there, can you? Okay, in that goes. Then what have I got next? What have I got next? I've got some cinnamon. I've got 1/2 teaspoon of fresh ground cinnamon. Then I've got some allspice. Again, 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. Then I've got some salt. How much salt? Teaspoon of salt. And then a good grind of freshly ground black pepper. Okay, so that's all going in there, and I'm going to put a glove on, or 2 even. I might be doing it 2-handed, I don't know, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my thighs in it. Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to chuck my thighs in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to give them a good old mix around in that spice mix. Okay, and then when I've got them all nicely coated, okay, you can see when I've got my glove on, I'm not doing a bloody Jamie and keep my hands all slimy and horrible. You know, I'm also, his skin's coming off. Nude, got a nude thigh. So once I've now got this nicely coated, what I'm now going to do is we're now just going to lay this out on the baking tray, and then we're going to put that into the oven. Like I say, it's on at 200, and we're going to then roast this for at least 30 minutes until basically it's nicely roasted. All right, so I'm going to get rid of my glove, get that in the oven, and then I'll tell you about the rest of it. So, like I said, Musakhan is sort of the national dish of Palestine, okay, but it is found in other nearby countries, so Lebanon, Jordan, those sort of places, okay. Levantine cuisine, I think that's how you pronounce it. That's certainly how you spell it, Levantine. What I'm doing here, I've got 3 largish red onions, and I'm just thinly slicing these for later. Because this is a dish, like I say, we're cooking the meat, but we're also going to cook off some onions. It's got pine nuts in it. It's got these spices, some of which we've already added to the chicken, more of which we're going to add to like the onions, and more again that we're going to then put on top afterwards when we serve it. And like I say, it's served on a traditional bread known as a taboon bread. Okay, and I baked some taboon earlier, and there is a video showing you how to make this stuff. Okay, it's basically an unleavened bread. Okay, and you'll notice it's sort of like dimply. Okay, these aren't huge. Normally they'd be about a foot across. But the dimples are because of the bottom of the oven is like stony, and so it creates these little dimples. And the idea being that when we then put our food on top of this, the dimples sort of retain some of the juices and things like that. So, like I say, Musakhan, from the Arabic meaning something that is heated. It's also known as a muhamma. I'm not quite sure if I pronounced that one right. Again, Arabic meaning reddish, and that comes from the sumac that we add, that spice. So, like I say, it's essentially a sort of a roasted, sort of a semi-spiced roasted chicken served on a bread with onions and pine nuts. Yeah, be careful, not knock fingers off. So while I'm talking about chopping my fingers off, what would be really nice, especially given the current situation, which you don't know about, if you could make sure you like my video, okay, and even better, it'd be nice if you subscribed. Alright. Anyway, I'm just going to slice these onions up. Now I've got a pan here ready to do me frying of my onions, but before we do that, we're going to fry up some pine nuts. Okay, get on there. Bloody onions going everywhere. We've got about 30 grams of pine nuts. Okay, actually I've got 26 or 27 grams because that's all I had left. But you want to, for what we're cooking here, you want about 30. It's more, in a way, a bit like a garnish. And you're also going to want some fresh parsley, and then we'll serve it with a little bit of ooh, that almost had me finger. That's what I get when I'm talking while I'm doing this. We'll serve it up with some nice sort of yogurt and a wedge of lemon, if you like that sort of thing. So I'm just going to slice my last bit of onion, have another swig of stout, and then we'll start cooking some stuff through. So the first thing we're going to do, well, not the first thing, because we've done other first things, haven't we? But what I mean is the first thing we're going to start cooking, other than the chicken that's in the oven, is I'm going to take some of that oil, and I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of oil to this pan, and we're going to heat that up on sort of a medium to high heat, and then I'm going to sort of roast or toast off my pine nuts. Okay, so while we're waiting for that to come up to temperature, I was saying to you about this is a traditional dish. The things that's in it: olive oil, Sumac, this spice Sumac, that red spice. There's loads in here. Still loads more to use. See it? The sumac and the pine nuts are all sort of staples of Palestinian cuisine, hence they're in this thing. Typically the dish, like I suppose like a lot of Middle Eastern dishes, would be eaten with your hands, and I don't mean with a knife and fork in your hands, obviously not. And it was almost always presented with the chicken on top of the bread, and that partly helped in a way to pick the stuff up. So this is a very popular dish amongst Palestinians, Israeli Arabs, Jordanians. All right. What was I going to say? I think I've told you about all the ingredients. And just as a matter of interest, so I'm just going to chuck them in there. Now, we don't want these obviously catching or burning, so what we're going to do is obviously I'm going to keep my eye on these, keep these turning. I've got a little plate here with some kitchen towel on, and the idea being that when these are toasted a little bit, as it were, we'll remove them. We'll leave any oil in there, but we will be adding the rest of the oil. But a little fact for you, on April the 20th, 2010, the largest ever Musakhan was prepared in Palestine. Okay, the total diameter of the taboon loaf that was used for the Musakhan was 4 metres. The total dish weight was 1,350 kilos. Fucking heavy. Just over a tonne, isn't it? It took 40 Palestinian cooks to bake. They used 250 kilos of flour, 170 kilos of olive oil. No, you say flour, where's bloody flour? That's to make the bread. Alright? Check the other video. 500 kilos of onions and 70 kilos of almonds. Doesn't actually tell you about the amount of chicken they used. So that went in the Guinness Book of Records, World Book of Records. So, really, for once, that's all the history. That's it. What we talk about now? I could tell you about taboon bread and the taboon oven, terracotta oven. Goes back to biblical times. You'll hear all this if you watch me taboon bread video, but no, the taboon oven goes all the way back to biblical times. It was quite a common practice to have taboon ovens in the home, in the community. It might be a communal oven people use. Nowadays, very rare, everybody's got a taboon oven. So you can recreate it in your own home using pebbles. Not the character from the Flintstones. Pebbles from the rivers or the sea. Give them a good wash though, like I did. And then you just lay them out and you put your bread on it. And like I say, the point of that was to create this sort of dimple effect on the bread. To catch all the juices. Everything like that. Right, so I'm just going to cook these through. Like I said, as soon as these added about 5 minutes, they've started to just started to take a bit of colour up. I'm going to oik them out onto the kitchen paper, just to obviously let them drain, and then we'll start spicing up and cooking the onions. So that's me nuts out the oil. What I'm now going to do is I'm now going to add the remainder of that oil. I said to you there was about 120 mils of oil in total, okay, and I've been taking out portions of it, put that in there to soak. And what we're now going to do is we're going to give it a bit of a grind of salt, okay, about half a teaspoon of salt, actually 3/4 teaspoon of salt, I think. Your pink Himalayan salt, nowhere near Palestine. Well, a bit nearer Palestine than England. And Then what we're going to do is we're going to chuck our onions in there. Okay, actually I'm going to pick that up and shove them in there. And I'm going to shove them on the floor and all over the oven and everywhere. And I'm going to put that on about a medium heat. Come here. And what we want to do is cook them until they're nice and soft with a pale golden colour. We don't want to caramelise them though. Alright? So we've still got some spices to add to it, but we'll add them in once we've cooked the onions first. So it's probably going to be about 15 minutes, okay, to cook these onions through. So what we will be adding once these are cooked through is, what I've got here is about 2 tablespoons of sumac. I've got 2 teaspoons of fresh ground cumin, and I've got a good grind black pepper. Okay, and that's going to go in when we cook the onions. I might start crying now. Because I'm quite a sensitive person by nature. Actually, I don't think he's making me cry now. Well, yes, it is. It's funny, you want to cut him and it didn't affect me. But now as I'm starting to heat them, I can feel it now. And I need to have a break because I need to top my beer up. So, we will be doing a little bit more with the taboon bread because obviously I cooked them yesterday as it happened. So we need to warm that up and also do a little finishing touch there before we serve it all up. So my chicken looks like it's cooking. My onions onto a 15-minute-ish cook. So my onions are looking nice and soft now, and a bit of colour to them. So what we're going to do now, like I say, is I'm going to turn my heat right down. I'm sprinkling that pepper, cinnamon, wasn't it? Yeah, no, cumin, and the sumac. Now the sumac is an interesting thing. This is a dried berry. I think it's in Iran. They actually use it as like a condiment. You sprinkle on your food under it. It's a slightly, sorry, you should spit in it. Slightly sort of tangy, citrusy spices made from dried berries. And we're putting a load of that in there. What we're going to do is we're going to mix that in. Interestingly, before the Romans introduced lemons, sumac in sort of the Middle Eastern areas was often used to add that citrusy sort of tang to it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that's all thoroughly mixed in. That's quite a coarse ground. You sometimes get it as quite a fine powder. This is going a bit Australian. But anyway, we're getting close to finishing off now. So what I need to do is just basically keep them warm. Okay, like I say, we don't want to end up caramelising them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop up a bit of fresh parsley, which we will be putting on top of it. Now, I said to you that the I think I once said this many times at the videos ago. But I used to work as like a chef. Strange as it may seem. And I'm sure I've told you this before. I was once offered a chance to give up my desire to go to university, because at the time I was working in kitchens as I was waiting to go to university, and actually once I sort of was at university during my holidays, and it was put to me that if I wanted, they would put me through chef school, as it were. But obviously I would have to give up my dreams of being a scientist. I'm a microbiologist by trade, geneticist. But one of my jobs, actually one of my earlier jobs, when I was working in the kitchen, was chopping the parsley up. Tons of it. Right. Anyway, so we just chopped up a bit of parsley to go on it. And the only other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to quarter a lemon. So we've got a little bit of lemon to put on. Whoop, just spray myself lemon juice. So that we've got to add as a little bit of garnish. So we're essentially just about there now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this taboon bread, and because obviously I made that yesterday, I'm going to warm that under a grill. I can't do that until I finish my chicken. But also, in a traditional taboon oven, quite often what happens is the upper surface and the edges start to char a bit. So what we're going to do is when we're a bit close, chicken's ready. All right, well, it should be ready. I'll check in a minute. But when we're ready to start assembling it, what I'll do is I'll warm this in the oven. I might whack it in there in a minute. And then just before we're ready to serve it, I'm going to put it over a flame and char grill it on one side and a little bit around the edges. Because obviously we don't want it cold. Okay, and like I said, I'm just going to prepare a little dish of, rather than wallop it on the side, because the wife is saying, well, I don't necessarily want all that yoghurt. I'm going to put it in a little dish, be posh. All right. So we've got our onions cooked, we've got our parsley chopped, we've got our onions quartered, we've got our pine nuts roasted, and I've got a little bit more sumac. I've got about another 1.5 teaspoons of sumac, which we'll sprinkle on. Run out there. So I'm just going to check on my chicken, and then I'm going to warm the taboon. I was going to call naan breads then, they're a bit like naan breads. But they're actually more like sort of pita breads. Although if you watch the video, normally with the pita bread, they inflate. These tend not to. Right? So, I'm just going to wait on my chicken. So, I've warmed the bread up in the oven. And all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pass this over a flame, just to char it up a little bit. Actually, I should do it the other way around, because that's where most of the dimples are. Char it up a little bit. Not really charring very much, is it? And then I'm just going to lay that onto the plate. So we've got 2 of these. Now in a big taboon bread, you might want to break it up in half, you might want to break it up in quarters. There you go, it's starting to char a little bit. You know, tear it up to whatever size. Whoop, starting to burn now. So we're just going to do that. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, well, basically I've halved the onions, and what we're going to do is we're just going to put a layer of those onions over the bread. Okay, and then I'm going to take a piece of chicken and we're going to put that on top of each one. And then the idea being, we will then top it with the remaining onions on top of the chicken. Okay. And as you will notice, there's a bit extra. Now, there's not an awful lot of juices come out of this chicken. Alright. There's not an awful lot of juices come out of this chicken. What we can do is pour this, mainly it's just mainly like grease. You can pour this over the top. Okay. But I'm not going to, because it's just mainly grease. So then we take the remaining half of the onions and we just sprinkle them on top. He says again, getting it every bloody where. Okay. And then the idea being we sprinkle a little bit of parsley over. We take some fresh sumac and just sprinkle some of that over the top. And then, like I say, we serve that with a wedge of lemon or two and some yogurt. Okay, so there we are, our Palestinian Musakhan. Now, given the other plate's got a bit of extra on it, I'll taste it for you in a second. And I forgot, we also need to take some of them pine nuts and sprinkle the pine nuts on top. There you go. So I don't want you missing out on the tasting. So I've taken a bit of chicken, got a bit of the onion, a bit of the pine nut. Let's try it out. Now I haven't added any of that lemon juice from the lemons yet, but that sumac definitely gives it a really nice sort of citrusy tang. Well, sorry, the sumac gives it a nice citrusy tang without being over the top. And chicken's just right. Now you can shred your chicken. You shred it on there, serve it like that, serve it whole like I've done. Up to you. Like that. I was about to put that on, got ringing. Is your Musakhan, your Palestinian national dish. Cheers.